Hi everyone, it's Alexander. Welcome to my sewing room and my channel. Today is going to be a fun sew along tutorial, just sew along, practical use video of Kwik Sew's pattern K3883. Now, as you can probably see, I am wearing that sort of shirt. I made this shirt this week. Here's a picture of it on my Instagram. It got great sort of response, and a lot of people were like, well, how did you make it? What did you do? Why are you making your own clothes? Anyways, we're going to take you on, or I'm going to take you on the journey of me making this shirt, or not this shirt, one very much like it. Now, there are a few things to keep in mind when doing this pattern. There are no flat felled seams, and they call for a 1/4 inch seam all the way around, which is fine. Not normally how I would make a shirt. That also being said, I am actually between two sizes here, so I took the larger size and then increased the side seam, the shoulder seam, the seam allowances to make it a little tighter. You'll see that throughout the video where I'll let you know where I've changed the seam allowances. For this project, I went to one of my local sewing stores that are now open from COVID and picked up a fun light cotton floral print. Kind of a pride print. It's full of rainbows. I think it's going to work really well for this project. Like I said, it's easy, it's breezy. I like an easy breezy summer shirt. Now, if you were going to do this pattern with a full matching repeat, matching placket, everything matches perfectly, then you have your own time there. If you want to see that sort of video from me, let me know below and I will do a shirt where everything matches. Placket, sleeve, everything matches. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see me do that. Now, what I like to do to sort of have my shirt match across the front horizontally wise, just to have everything sort of neatly done, is every pattern has a lengthening line across usually the middle or the chest area if you want to lengthen or shorten the pattern. I use that line to make sure everything is straight. It makes it a little bit nicer and a little more professional. Also, when I tend to make my shirts, I wash the fabric first. If you're making clothes, make sure you wash the fabric first. You don't want to make something to your size, wash it and have it shrink on you. Shrink the fabric first. Anyways, so for this shirt, I washed the fabric and pressed right sides out. I, for some reason, always do everything right sides out. Some people do, some people don't. I just find it helps with the pattern matching. Each to their own. Anyways, I also put the fronts and the backs of the shirt along the fold. When you're doing the pattern layout, normally the back is obviously on the fold, but not so much the fronts. I do that so that everything, again, lines up neatly. You can just snip along that front fold. Now, I generally follow the pattern layouts for fabric. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. This case, I generally did. Once that was all done, I got all the fabric cut out. I'm not subjecting you to a fabric cutout video of this. It was just got some scissors and cut it out one night. I had a glass of wine or two. Now, this pattern calls for you to do everything on the grain line. Now, I usually do that 95% of the time. This pattern, for this fabric I didn't really have any issue with that, so I did it along the grain line. Here is an example when I wouldn't do it on the grain line. See, this fabric here is a printed fabric. Yes, I know they're 40s pinups, but if I laid those items on the grain line, you would see that the pattern of the fabric was going horizontally, let's say against the yoke, along the collar. I never liked that, so if I was gonna cut something with a pattern out on the grain line, then I would manipulate it the other way. So the grain line would be going opposite to what the pattern is asking. That is a personal choice. Again, it's about pattern matching. Again, if you want to see me try to pattern match an entire shirt, let me know in the comments below and I will try. As mentioned, I do my fronts on the fold as well. And then I just take my scissors and run them down that fold to create two separate shirt pieces. This pattern is actually kind of unique as it has a built-in placket on one side and then a placket you add on the other. That means the left front of the shirt needs to have a section removed so we can add a placket to it after. It seems confusing, but I'm telling you it does work. As you can see here, I'm removing the extra portion from the left side of the shirt, as we are making our own placket for this area. I measured, it was 2¼ inches. Easy to remove with my rotary cutter. This pattern also calls for some interfacing. I always recommend, if the pattern says to interface it within an inch of its length. Now that we have some of that tedious prep work done, it's time to start talking about the sewing itself. For me, I'm going to be using 3 machines. Yes, 3 different machines. 1, my large quilting machine. I use it all the time. It's got the best straight stitch I know. 2, my decades-old Kenmore, which does an amazing buttonhole. And then 3rd, I'm going to be using my serger. Now, if you don't have 3 sewing machines, I don't suspect you do, it can all be done on 1 regular machine. As long as it has a buttonhole setting or buttonhole stitches, you're fine there. The serger part, you can use an overlocking stitch if you really need to clean up those edges. For this pattern, I plan to go pretty much step by step through the instructions. So when you watch this video, you'll see I have everything generally labeled out. Step 1, step 2, step 3. I just want to give you, the viewer, the easiest and most comprehensive way of following along with me. I like to put basting stitches in where I know I need to iron. Here, I will need to iron over ½ inch. That's where I put the basting stitches. I also did this to the right side of the shirt, where we'll be making our own placket. Once done, I went over to my ironing board and pressed along that basting line. Next, it was to add the placket to the front of the shirt, the left side. You'll be placing this right side to wrong side. What that means is you'll be placing the right side of the placket to the wrong side of the shirt. Once sewn, this is what you have. Next, take it to your ironing board and iron the seam allowance towards the body of the shirt. Once ironed, this is what you will have. Now, with the 1/8 inch foot on your machine, sew down the outer edge and then the inner edge of that placket. As shown, you will have this. This second 1/8 inch basting stitch is where you'll be ironing. See, here we ironed along that 1/8 inch basting stitch to give a mini facing, if you will. And now we need a top stitch along that edge at a 1/8 inch seam. This gives a nice professional look. You're going to do that along this seam and along the inner seam as well. So once you've done that, you'll end up with something like this, finished on both sides. Neat, nice, and professional. Now, as you can see, we've just finished the left side of the shirt. Now we're moving on to the right side that has the built-in placket. This can get a little confusing. Just follow along. The right shirt panel is a little different, as it has a built-in front placket. Now again, we've already ironed and pressed where needed according to the pattern, and now we just need to do some top stitching. The pattern does call for 1/4 inch top stitching. I find 1/8 much more professional and neat looking. I ran a 1/4 inch basting seam around the outside of the pocket. This gave me a nice, easy way and easy guide to follow when pressing, as noted here. The pattern also calls for rounded pocket corners. I am not the one for that, so I decide to go on a 45-degree angle for the bottom corners, going 1 inch on either side. This, I think, gives it a little more personality. Once everything was pressed, I ran a quick 1/4 inch top stitch along the top of the pocket, as shown. Now it was time to add the pocket to the left panel of the shirt. Quickly, I just had to re-emphasize the marks of where the pocket is supposed to go, and then laid the pocket on these marks. The pattern matched up pretty well. Sewing the pocket down, I used an 1/8 inch seam to start, and then changed to a 1/4 inch foot, and then followed the same pattern. Then the pocket looked pretty good. This pattern includes a fully enclosed back yoke. And to get everything to line up, again, important, notches, notches, notches. Line up your notches in the right places, and everything should come together. With the right side up, I pinned the back to that yoke, so right sides together. Now with the second yoke, I pinned wrong side to right side. That means the second yoke is right side to the shirt back's wrong side. Then it was to the sewing machine using the suggested 1/4 inch seam allowance, making a nice back panel sandwich. Then just took it to the ironing board and pressed everything up. That means the yokes are now wrong sides together with the back panel out the bottom. Now it was time to add the 2 front panels of the shirt, the right and the left, at the shoulder seams. With the front panels and back panels right sides together, you only want to pin that one yoke to the front panel, leaving the wrong side yoke flapping about in the back. We'll use that in a minute. Now once you have that yoke pinned to the front of the shirt, you're going to want to, I'm going to put in an interesting way, roll everything up. You're going to want to flip that back yoke behind the other fabric, roll the front and back panels up into sort of a burrito shape, and then you're going to want to pin the yoke up to the other yoke that you just finished pinning. Here, you can see with my fingers, it sort of makes a U shape because you got all that shirt stuffed inside. Pin those 2 yokes together. This would be wrong sides to wrong sides now. See? A little burrito. Now over at the sewing machine, you're going to be stitching this down with a suggested 1/4 inch seam. Now you're obviously going to be doing this for both shoulders. As shown here, I've done it for both shoulders. Once everything is stitched together, you have to gently, and I mean gently, bring the shirt through the neck opening. Again, you're unrolling this sort of fabric burrito. I'm going to tell you, it will turn out. And there you go. Like I said, turned out great. All the seams are now encased inside those yokes. Then it's just a matter of following those seams, stitching on the yokes at 1/8 of an inch to provide this sort of look. Perfect. Beautiful. Amazing. Because I find collars fussy to do, what I'm doing here is making sure to put a 1/4 inch basting stitch on where I need to iron and attach to the actual shirt itself. I've done this to the interface side and the non-interface side. Then to the collar, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam all the way around, joining the 2 pieces. Once the collar part is actually all joined together, it's about to turn. Turn the corners so they're nice and sharp, trimming where you need to, using your point turn to get the best corners possible. Once you've done that, then 1/4 inch top stitch all the way around the actual collar part. Now it was time to join the collar stands to the actual collar. Collar base? Collar stand? Let me know in the comments below what this actual part of the shirt actually is. Anyways, interface portion down, then the actual collar itself, line up those notches. Notches are your friends. Once you've done that, just get it in there to one piece, pin it in place. Pin it in place where those other notches are too. Notches, notches, notches. Never don't cut out the notches. Now that you have one of the collar stands attached to the collar, right sides together, you'll be placing the other collar stand, collar brace, whatever, right side down to the collar's right side. Again, using the pins you already have, pinning it in place. I find this the easiest way to do everything. Next, it's over to the machine, and again with the 1/4 inch recommended in the pattern, sewing all those pieces together into a nice collar sandwich. As you can see here, around those corners, down the side of the collar, and back. Now, once everything was pressed, it was time to attach the collar to the actual shirt. First, the center notch, pinning in place. Then, the other 2 notches hit the shoulder seams. Now, we have everything pinned in. We have a basting line there for sewing. Now, we just need to sew along that basting line to make sure everything is now attached. Go slow if you need to. It can be very fussy. Once finished, you will have something like this. Just check to make sure there's no puckers or anything of that nature. Because we did that basting stitch, you can now turn that and use that as a guide to pin with the other seam that's already there. As you can see here, also the pins are on the outside of the shirt. I smell garlic. Over at the sewing machine, using the 1/8 inch foot again, top stitch all the way around that collar. Take your time, making sure to catch all the layers of the fabric. Along that basting stitch, on the other side, everything. This can again be fussy, but it's worth doing it properly. Once you have taken your time doing that, this is what you'll end up with. Everything nice and neat and together. Look at the top stitching. Look how solid that collar will now be. If you know me, you know I dislike setting in sleeves. Oddly though, this pattern was fairly easy. This is one of the things I changed from the original pattern. I went with a 1/2 inch seam here. I just felt it was a little nicer and fit me better. Once finished, I checked the garment to make sure there was no puckers or misaligned seams, anything of that nature. Again, when I pinned everything in, I made sure to use the notches as my guide. It was then over to the serger to clean up those seams. This shirt does not require any flat felled seams, so serging makes it much nicer. If you don't have a serger, you could use your overlocking stitch and trim. Here's what they look like afterwards. Now it was time to, as you guessed it, top stitch again. With that seam, mine was serging points there, you want to have it pressed over towards the body of the garment, away from the sleeve. Again, top stitching at 1/8 of an inch. Once you've done that, this is what you're left with. A nice, neat top stitch along that shoulder seam. On the other side, the serging is nicely held together on the shirt. The side seam procedure is very much like the shoulder seam. One thing is, though, you need to match the shoulder seams together underneath the armpit. Once you've done that, you have a lovely seam like this. I used a 1/2 inch again, just for fit for myself. Just like the sleeves in the shoulder seam, we're going to do some serging. So I didn't need to show you this again, but we're just going to serge that seam from the underarm all the way down to the bottom hem. Once that was done, your serging, you're going to want to have it fold over towards the back of the shirt. That's right, the back of the shirt away from the front panels. Top stitching again to hold everything down at 1/8 of an inch. In the pattern, it says to do the sleeve cuff at 1/4 inch. I went for a full inch. I like a little less billowy of a sleeve and a larger cuff. So what I did here was add an 1 inch basting stitch around the cuff of the sleeve, to which I will fold over, and then fold over onto itself again, encasing the raw edges in that cuff. Again, I think this gives a nice professional look. Also, I just think it looks good anyway. Now that you have the sleeve cuff turned and turned so it's inside of itself, there's no raw edges, now it's time to just do a top stitch all the way around. I just did 2 single lines. I just think it looks nice, straight stitching, about 1/4 inch, and then about 3/8 of an inch away from the edge of the actual sleeve. I chose to serge the bottom of the shirt. The pattern did not call for this. I just think it gives a nice, easy area to work with. Fold the corner over 45 degrees. This gives you a nice area for the placket to end at the bottom of the shirt. Fold over 45, roll, and then roll if you really want to a second time to close that. I'm not going to. Over to the sewing machine, this time using about 1/4 inch. I went all along the bottom of the shirt, taking my time to make sure to manipulate the fabric around the curves. Please note, I also dislike doing hems. Boo. Just like I won't hem your jeans, hemming the bottom of the shirt does take a bit. You have to manipulate the fabric. So as you saw, you just got to keep on going until you get to the end. Go slowly if you feel you're sort of fussing with things a little too much. Go slow. The pattern itself tells you the location of the buttonholes based on measurement. Here I am using my measuring tape to measure out the location of those holes, marking them with my tailor's chalk. These are the buttons I had in my stash. I got these from Wish, weirdly, 6 months ago. My machine has a buttonhole setting, which, frankly, is a lifesaver. I just lined up the buttonhole foot with the markings I made in the center of the placket and let the machine do the rest of the work for me. And there we go, one neat, nice buttonhole. Many more to do. Once all the buttonholes were done, it was time to line up where the buttonholes and the actual buttons were going to be sewn on. What I do personally is lay the shirt together, placket versus placket, with a seam inside, usually the 1/8 inch to 1/8 inch seam, and pin at the bottom. Once everything was laying nice and flat, what I do is take a pin, put it in the center of the buttonhole, or the buttonhole that I'm looking to do, and graze it with chalk underneath, lifting the placket slightly. Let's do that again. Buttonhole in the center of the buttonhole area I've just made. Then lift up the placket slightly, dab a little chalk down there. This gives me the perfect location for the sewn buttons. As you might expect, me in a video hand sewing buttons on is not the most exciting thing. I don't like doing buttons. Buttons sort of annoy me. But I did them. So, now that the buttons are on though, you know what time it is? I think it's time for a fashion show. That fashion show was exciting for you. So, there you go. Shirt is done. Buttons are on quite nicely. Everything looks pretty good. I hope you enjoyed that video. Sorry it was a bit long, but I felt it was important to go step by step and really show everything that I was doing. Please comment below if you like this video and you want to see more of these sorts of videos. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. This is the awkward pause where you subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to hit the bell icon just over here so you get notified as to when my new videos are posted. And I hope you had a great day and hope you enjoyed watching me make this shirt. Bye now.